October 4th, 1957, at 7:28 p.m. UTC, the Sputnik 1 rocket was launched into the sky from Site number 15 at the 5th Tuortan Range in the Soviet Socialist Republic of Kazakhstan. 90 minutes after the launch, when Sputnik completed one orbit around the Earth and had successfully been transmitting radio signals, it was announced that the Soviet Union had successfully placed the first artificial satellite in the Earth's orbit. Sputnik remained in orbit until it had completed 1,440 orbits around the Earth, traveling nearly 67 million kilometers before decaying and re-entering the Earth's atmosphere on January 4th, 1958. By the 1950s, the Cold War had escalated. In less than a decade, the world's two superpowers, the United States of America and the Soviet Union of Socialist Republics, had been in conflict due to different ideologies and goals. Events such as the communist takeover of China, the announcement of the Truman Doctrine, the Korean War, the Warsaw Pact versus the formation of NATO, had all aided the buildup of tensions between the two. An arms race, as well as the struggle for technological dominance, was also an important part of the Cold War. This technological warfare was the direct cause of the development of Sputnik. While the most contemporary objects that travel into space are of considerable size and mass, the USSR had intentionally designed a small satellite. The most important reason for that was that the USSR strived to launch an artificial satellite into space before the US. A small satellite would be easy to produce in greater quantities. It is estimated that between 8 and 20 some satellites have been produced as backup or test devices. While not the greatest of concerns, the production of such a small satellite would show low production costs, and it would enable the production of multiple objects. The first Sputnik, or PS-1, the simple satellite, was a silver ball with 4 long rods protruding from one side with a diameter of only 58.5 centimeters and a mass of 83.6 kilograms. The satellite had 2 antennas, giving Sputnik a spider-like appearance. Sputnik operated on 2 different radio frequencies so that people around the world could hear it on their radios beeping away. One of the main purposes of the launch of Sputnik was to showcase the advances of Soviet technology and scare people, primarily the Americans. Both these goals were reached as the sounds of Sputnik were picked up by a ham radio station of Columbia University and then broadcasted around the country. Those who heard these sounds broadcasted on the radio were terrified of the unknown object in space. Anyone who doubted its existence could walk into that backyard just after sunset and see it, comments Mike Gray, an American writer and cinematographer. Another significant consequence of the Sputnik launch was the American launch of the Advanced Research Projects Agency on the basis of Directive 510515, issued by the U.S. Department of Defense issues in February of 1958 as an attempt to regain a technological lead. The USSR further surprised the world when several months after the launch of Sputnik 1, the USSR launched Sputnik 2, even before the US managed to launch its very first satellite. John Logsdon, the former director of the Space Policy Institute, comments, "Our movies and television programs in the 50s were full of the idea of going into space. What came as a surprise was that it was the Soviet Union that launched the first satellite. It is hard to recall the atmosphere of the time." To further exhibit their supremacy in the space race, Soviet leaders demanded that the engineers make Sputnik visible from the Earth. Due to this request, the body of the satellite ended up being highly polished, so that it would reflect light from the sun, appearing as a star. Now anyone with a telescope could watch the Soviet Union fly ahead of the US in space development. While such attempts were made by Soviet leaders, it had eluded the USSR until much later that Sputnik was the perfect propaganda tool. The launch of Sputnik wasn't even headlined in Pravda, the largest newspaper at the time, until much later after the launch. On March 17, 1958, Vanguard 1 became the second artificial satellite successfully placed in the Earth's orbit by the United States. It was the first solar-powered satellite, just 152 millimeters in diameter, weighing just 1.4 kilograms. Vanguard 1 was described by then Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev as the grapefruit satellite. Sputnik was not only the first stepping stone to man in space, but also the birth of a new Cold War, one beyond the horizons of the Earth.